Hello, Stuart Goldsmith.
Hello.
We're in the back of your car.
Yes, we're in the back of my wife's car.
Okay.
My car is not this nice, and I frequently borrow her car for long drives to gigs, which is now making her car as not very nice as mine. But yeah, for the moment, it's pretty sweet.
Well, yeah, I guess. Well, they know now, but they didn't need to.
Yeah.
But they do. So you've just we're in Leicester. We're at the Leicester Comedy Festival, and you've just done your sort of like work in progress show.
Yes, that's right.
Is that like the first time you would have done that?
It's the first time I've done all of that stuff. I have done 3 previews before, but I did those in November. I do a thing called Hell Week, where I basically pick a date in November and go, right, I'm going to write all day, do a show that night, listen back to it the next morning, rewrite it all day, do it again. It's called Hell Week, but I've only ever managed to do 3 in a row just because of other commitments. So that contained bits from the one I did tonight. Half of that stuff is gone, and about half of the stuff that you saw today was new, some of it brand new. That dancing musical bit that I did, which really sells the piece. That was an idea I had literally yesterday afternoon. So that's one of the exciting things about stand-up. Is you go, oh, try that, and you just try it. Yeah.
And so this is stuff that will be... So when you go to like Edinburgh this year, that'll be stuff that will be kind of more developed then, and you'll do that then?
Yes, this show needs to be ready on August the whatever it is, the 3rd, in order, or it might be earlier than that. But what I do when I'm on tour is I'm about to go on tour, as of tonight is my first tour date, and when I'm on tour I do the hour of the show that everyone's come to see, and then at the interval I say, hey look, as a bonus you've had your money's worth, but if you want to come back after the interval I'm going to do new material. So I'll be doing some of that stuff on tour.
Okay.
So then that's in the second half, and most comedians will kind of smuggle new material into the first half of their tour show. I think I'm quite unusual in that because I do the podcast that I do, all about the process of comedy, then my audience are slightly more primed and more receptive to the idea of me going, okay, I'm not going to smuggle new stuff in, I'm going to do absolutely the show, and then if you want to come back after the interval, then we can all really do some big flappy problematic new stuff off notes. And I think that's quite a creative environment for me, because obviously they've relaxed and gone, oh yeah, this is, you know, we've enjoyed ourselves, we believe in him, we've had a drink and a break, and then I think when there's enough belief in the room, that's when I kind of relax and end up making the best creative leaps.
I guess you've got them on your side at that point as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, you've still got to be funny, but when you're kind of it makes for quite a good crucible for new material.
Yeah.
What a great word that is. It makes a really nice environment. Yeah, they're up for it, they're on board, and I'm in a good mood almost always, and so I can really afford to take some risks. And I think that's where I'm...
And do you feel like, so like the work in progress kind of show that we've just seen, are audiences, because, you know, I guess it was quite a nice audience, quite receptive, I like to think, I guess I'm judging myself there, but is it always like that? Can it actually be quite frosty sometimes? Have you had really bad experiences with it?
Well, I think, yeah, definitely. We've all had bad experiences doing finished work sometimes in certain environments. So when the work is unfinished and you need to kind of, when you're still writing it on stage sometimes, or you're sort of, there were bits today where I kind of went, okay, and now I don't know what this bit is, but it's something about that thing I mentioned earlier and something about this. And they kind of look at you going, okay, well, we're prepared to believe that, but we're not laughing yet. You know, certainly there can be tougher environments than that. I'm quite lucky in that my touring profile, although very modest, is composed of people who really know me. I feel like I have a small number of really engaged fans who like the podcast, like what I do, want to support me, and what I'm hoping more and more is that they come along, they bring a friend who doesn't know me, and then I convert them. And it's, you know, I don't have a big TV profile, but I think my friends, comics that do have, who are famous, they're famous in a way that is great and gets them on TV a lot and probably makes them a lot of money. But the upside of my one is that I don't have to deal with the problems and the pressures of fame. If people recognise me in the street, chances are they're really nice people who know a lot about me, rather than it's that bloke off telly.
Yeah.
So that's a benefit. I'd rather have the money. I absolutely would rather have the money. But I'm sort of aware of what I've got, and I'm kind of humble about it and excited about it. You know.
Yeah. You mentioned the podcast briefly, which is obviously kind of a big thing for you, and you work on that probably as much as your stand-up stuff. I hope that's correct.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you do that for a kind of reason to help your stand-up stuff as like a backup kind of thing?
No.
Or like, was that just something you really wanted to do?
Yeah, I think I was in the... Like, podcasting existed when I started, but I feel that every comedian now, it would be crazy for you not to have a podcast, because we're all communicators. We want to express ideas, and if you can express ideas into a microphone and then put them online, and someone on the other side of the world can have a laugh and tell you, like, why would you not want to do that? But I think I was one of the last bastion of people who started it because it was weird and awkward and it probably wouldn't go anywhere, but it was exciting. And now I think a lot of people since me have started because you should probably have a podcast. Like, I feel like I started mine in... I don't mean that anyone starting recently is cynical at all.
Yeah.
You need to put a lot of work into a thing to get it to live and breathe and continue. And I think you can't really be... You know, if you start one cynically, you won't keep going. But I do think that I went into it with no idea of how much time I would spend doing it now, 6 years later.
Is there anyone that when you started it you kind of set out to chat to? Is there anyone that you thought, maybe even you thought, I'd love to chat to someone like this about the process of comedy, and then it kind of happened?
Yeah, well, there was a big dream that then I got. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, loads of people. I mean, Stuart Lee is one of the most obvious examples. Slightly more kind of... a kind of comedy nerd would recognise Patton Oswalt. Patton Oswalt is just one of the finest comedians in the world. I love his imagination. I love the way he expresses himself. I love his technique. He does all these really stuff that like a comedy nerd is really excited by. Like, he always puts the moment of realisation into the joke. So it's not just a story of a thing happening. It's a story of him realising something where that becomes the plot often. So I just love his mind. And I got in touch with him and interviewed him live at the Just for Laughs festival in Montreal, which is a thing I remember watching on telly when I was 10. And I was interviewing my dream comic guest in a really exciting city. So yeah, absolutely. But things like that happen all the time. I was around Arabella Weir's house earlier on, and you might remember, is the lady from the Fast Show, the girl one. And she is so funny and wise. And it's such a privilege to talk to people who I watched on TV as a younger person, as a teenager or someone in my 20s, and actually get to know them and get them to reflect on their career and actually make a bit of a bond with them. I get surprised by people constantly. There are the Stuart Lees and the Patton Oswalts who I think, I wish I could get them. And then there are people who I've only discovered recently who I then interview and get on with and get a new dimension out of, or people who I've deliberately, someone offered them to me for the show and I had no idea about their work, and then I looked it up and went, oh my god, they're amazing. So I'm constantly discovering and experiencing all this stuff about my favourite thing, and it's pretty sweet, but it's pretty exhausting.
I guess it's that's rewarding though. Do you I mean, you kind of just answered the question I'm about to ask, but just confirm, so does it help you writing as well? So do you see different things because I guess you don't want to change your style of stand-up too much, because you've kind of got your own thing.
Sure.
But do you chat to these people and then you think, that would be really interesting, maybe I'd even like to try that? I guess you have all these work in progresses where you can trial it out and stuff.
Yes, I do. I should write a list of them, because people do ask me variations on this quite a lot. I mean, that's certainly what I'd ask. How has it changed the way if you're asking people about how they write comedy, how has that changed the way you write comedy? Most of the things that I think on a day-to-day basis when I'm sat writing jokes, most of the techniques I employ are mental health techniques. They're kind of like stopping anxiety, staying efficient, making it something you look forward to. They're those sorts of techniques. Probably one of the biggest ones is I actually sit down and write far less than I used to. I'm trying to write this show on stage, because that's something all the American guests started telling me, well, I do my writing on stage. And I was like, oh my God, what does that mean? And actually, you are never as good sitting in a room trying to think of a punchline as you are standing in a room in front of people who desperately need a punchline.
Yeah.
You leap all the time, and that's something Marcus Brigstock, actually, British comic, mentioned a few years ago when I interviewed him, he talks about the comic super brain and the fact that you only make that leap when you have to make that leap. I notice that happening all the time. That's not like a technique I employ, but I recognise that happening a lot. So probably writing on stage is one of them. The mental health stuff, just ways to feel better about when it isn't happening. And there must be one or two. I always think of Sarah Pascoe saying that if you look at something in enough detail, it's funny. If you can describe it honestly enough. Sometimes if I'm a bit stumped on the detail of a story, I'll just think, well, describe it. Just let them. Oh, that's the other thing is, I mean, the show that I'm doing tonight and in Nottingham and on tour is called Like I Mean It. And I gave myself that note every day. My tech would come and say to me every day before I went on, I'd asked her to come and say, just mean it. Just mean it. That's the only note I wanted before I went on. Just remember to actually mean it. Just don't find yourself going through the motions. Don't find yourself saying the script. The words that, like, I think I'm a much more honest comic now. I think I used to just be saying clever things in order to get a laugh, and now, and I'm sure that's from the podcast, but we'll never know if I wouldn't have happened on my own. I used to just say whatever I could possibly say to get a laugh. I think that's a lot of what young comics do. Yeah. And the people I revere, the people who are the really good people at comedy, I think they're saying something because they have to. And that's far more what I do now. And that's become easier in the last few years because I had a kid and now I've got a lot more to complain about. You know, life is much better and much harder. And so I think previously I was bimbling along having quite a fun life and all I really had to complain about was depression. And I didn't really have the writing skills to make it funny. And now I think I can just... my comedy shows, my time on stage is much more an opportunity for me to go, oh, right, let me get this off my chest. And that, I think, makes for a much more vivid show. Mm-hmm. You really only have to ask 2 questions with me, and I just bang on.
It's all very interesting. I'm taken. So we should probably talk about the show, the tour.
Sure.
You mentioned it a bit. Like I Mean It. It's what you were doing in Edinburgh. Me and Ben came and saw you in Edinburgh.
Oh, nice one. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Really good. Where are you taking it? What are you doing with it? Where are you going?
So it's 40 dates. I'm taking it all around Britain. I'm also taking it to Dublin, which is very exciting. Looking forward to that. And it culminates. It's going to a couple of... It's here at the Leicester Comedy Festival. It's going to the Machynlleth Comedy Festival, which is the secret Welsh one I'm always talking about on the podcast, which is in the sort of middle of the west coast of Wales, I think. And that is an amazing boutique festival, so I'm taking it there. I'll do 3 nights in Soho Theatre in London, and then I'm going to Tringe, which is the Tring Fringe. There's another festival there. Am I doing it anywhere else? I did it in New Zealand earlier on this year, but that wasn't part of the tour. I was there for another festival and then got the chance to do it there once. So yeah, what I'm trying to do is gradually increase the scale of my touring. It was so exciting. One of the, it's lovely selling out a week in London. That's a very exciting feeling. But one of the nicest things on last year's tour was I went to Cambridge, where I've never toured before, and I sold out a smallish room, like 110, 120. But it was sold out before I got there. I went, who are these people? Why are they here?
Yeah.
And I have to remember not to start my shows by going, good evening, who are you? You know what I mean? You don't want to just sort of take away their confidence in my ability. But that's really, really gratifying. I've been doing comedy for a long time, and I think when I was a greener comic, when I was newer, I thought that what you do was you keep going for long enough, and then you go on TV, and then you tour. And you realise when you're a comic that you keep going for long enough, and maybe you get some TV, maybe you don't, maybe you do a sitcom, maybe you don't, maybe you tour, maybe you can't actually tour. And it's only really through the profile of the podcast. You need to connect up, like, I'm good enough to tour, but will anyone come and see me? There are brilliant comics at the moment who can't get enough people. Like 100 people is worth doing. Even then, there's a lot of costs. You don't get... Yeah. I remember seeing acts and going, oh my God, it's 20 quid a ticket and there's 1,000 people here. He must be making 20 grand. And you go, no. There's a lot of costs. There's a lot of, commission and the split with the theatre and everything. But if you can do 100 people, it's worth doing. And there are people who are far better comedians than I who don't quite have that profile yet to be able to physically get people in the space. It's like if you run your own comedy club, you go, I know loads of comics, this will be easy. And you go, no, 99% of the job is, can you get punters in through the door? So it's taken me a long while to kind of learn about the mechanics of it all. But I just love it. I'm just so lucky. It's such an exciting experience to do a 2-hour show, to do an hour and then a break and then 45 to an hour of new stuff in front of people who are there to see me. And last year's tour was great. I'm really excited about this year's tour. I am knackered. I am, but as soon as I go on tour, I'll be staying in hotels and sleeping better. So, which I say with apologies to my wife.
And then sort of finally, I guess, afterwards, I'm guessing you're going back to Edinburgh and doing the kind of thing again. And so do you see that? Well, yeah. So you say you kind of try and scale up a tour each time. Where do you see yourself? I know maybe it's a bit of a jinx question, but like, is there anywhere else you'd kind of like to branch out to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what would be really exciting for me is if I could get to the stage where people offer me things because I'm me. That's really I get a tiny little bit of that here and there, and that's really exciting. And I know a lot of comics that I've come up with who are big famous guys who now a lot of their time is spent turning things down because people are like, you'd be great for this, you'd be great for this, and they need to select the thing that they think they can actually do well. And I love the idea of having that kind of control and spending less time in my car. So that's exciting. But it's like, someone sent me a script the other day. Oh, we'd like to, it was a kind of a spec script for a thing, but she wasn't like a professional writer. She was just like, oh, I think you'd be really good for this. And I can't devote that time to it because I'm trying to get to a stage where, I'll get sent scripts by people who are like, and if you say yes, we give you paid work doing this thing, So I'm developing a TV show, which is my own TV show concept at the moment. That's kind of derived from the podcast. And that's really exciting. So if that kicks off, then hopefully that will bounce the profile a little bit. The tour audience might double, and then you start going. I'm just so, I think in comedy, if you want to be a star, you have to dream like a star, and I don't think I dream like a star. I think I dream like, I'll get that, and then I'll get there, and then I'll get there, and then I'll get there. And that's just the way I am. I know some people who dream bigger than me, but I just love performing. I just love doing it. I love turning up and doing it, and I'd love to do more of it in more places and different places. And if 10 years from now I'm doing TV comedy, that's great. And if 10 years from now I'm doing all the Australian festivals and I'm on tour forever with my family in a truck, that's great. And if in 10 years I'm back here in Leicester doing, if it's a bigger room and it's more money and it feels like a progression, that's great. And if I'm back here in 10 years in Leicester doing the same room with new material because I took 5 years off to be a parent and let my wife get back into her career, whatever, that's brilliant as well. Whatever I can get from it, I hope I'll be happy with.
It's been a very rewarding interview.
Thank you.
Stuart.
Well, do you know what I always do is, because I get my podcast hat on, I always start talking about process. I haven't told you anything about the show, what the show's about, all the rest of it. I want you, the viewer, to come and see my show in Nottingham. Because it's really funny, and I always fear in interviews that I've gone, right, here's all the behind the scenes stuff. Oh, by the way, it's a really funny show as well. Okay, bye.
Well, I can promise it's great. I've seen it in Edinburgh.
Thank you very much.
I did laugh a lot, and I can imagine the next one will be as good.
Thank you.
From this afternoon's performance. Thank you very much, Stuart. It's been lovely.
Thanks a lot, man.
Cheers.